Mr. Speaker, before I make my contribution to this debate, the one with which we are confronted, I want to place on record, Mr. Speaker, the resilience of a man who, in my view, was terminally ill and whom, in my view, epitomizes what resilience, resistance, and optimism is all about. And it's no other than the Honorable Speaker of the House. Mr. Speaker, to be quite honest, when I visited you and I saw you at certain public forum, my heart melted. And I asked myself whether the Speaker will leave us anytime soon. But having spoken to you, Mr. Speaker, the words that came from deep within, the strength that you mustered to speak those words still resonate in my mind. When you said to me, Mr. Minister, I will be fine. I'm hoping, Mr. Speaker, that others who may just feel up to the weekend, I went to see a man who's at stage 4 cancer, Mr. Speaker. Stage 4 in Denry. Actually, he has a daughter who's not ambulant, has been bedridden from the time she was born. She's going to be celebrating her 40th birthday, 40, in June, and has never walked on the floor. And he was the one who asked me to come visit his daughter. It was extremely touching. I left Central Castries and went to Denry North, Denry South, for that purpose. And so, Mr. Speaker, he called me again. And he said, this time I need you to come to see me. Well, his people, because I didn't even think he could have spoken. He said, I need you to come see me. They told me what he had said. I cannot walk. Sadly, when I went there, Mr. Speaker, the daughter has not changed. He himself is bedridden with stage 4 cancer. And the optimism and resilience that he demonstrated reminded me of your good self. If others emulate you with resistance and that kind of optimism, St. Lucia, being on the right trajectory, will go very, very, very far. Mr. Speaker, I congratulate you on your recovery, but your belief came from deep within and the help of the Almighty God. Mr. Speaker, like I said, it was never my intention. I thought this was a straightforward motion, which persons would have understood what the intention was, and that we would have just browsed over it with a certain degree of smoothness. But then again, I had to defer to the eloquence and the knowledge of our esteemed colleague, the member for Viewfort South, who is extremely knowledgeable, Mr. Speaker, in relation to the law and attendant facets of the law that impact on our duty here and operations of the court. But then, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition jumped in and spoke about a lady who was murdered, and the Prime Minister did not make a statement, or somebody did not make a statement. I can't remember who, but somebody did not make a statement. He went and spoke on constitutionality. Yes, this very man spoke of the interests of the people, this very man. And Mr. Speaker, you know, the sad thing is, when anything is said in this house and it goes unrefuted, it goes down the annals of belief. And so it is against this background, I humbly ask you to give me a little leeway. Let me at least attempt to jog the memory of the leader of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, justice, which is what we're dealing with now, Child Justice Act, is an embracing concept, embracing concepts concept rather, that take cognizance of all the different organizations and entities that are responsible for the dispensation of justice. That includes the police, that includes legislature, that includes the courts, etc., etc., etc. So, Mr. Speaker, when we speak of justice, one could go on ad infinitum speaking about justice, which is directly related to the motion at hand. But I want to start off with this. The leader of the opposition was audacious enough, Mr. Speaker, to single out women, and say that women are attacked and women is this and women are that, and we are hearing nothing from the government. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind the leader of the opposition that he was the very one sitting as Prime Minister on national radio and television who said single mothers are breeders of criminals. I just started.
Member for Mico South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The member is misleading the House. I never made that statement.
Member for Castries Central, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition, and thank God I am equipped with an alternative forum that I can juxtapose what he just said to what he said on national radio for the whole world to see. The whole world to see. You know, the same way he said the country is broke, turned around and said he never said the country is not broke. Perfect. So, Mr. Speaker, he's the very one who said those single mothers are breeders of criminals and the children should be taken away from them.
Mr. Speaker, again on a point of order, the member is misleading the House.
Member, when you raise on a point of order, you wait for me to
apologies.
call you. Please proceed now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Again, I'm going to ask, these are outlandish, outrageous statements, and I never made those statements. I spoke about what the statistics said. I never said that these women were breeders of criminals. Okay? And I never proposed that any children be taken away from anyone, Mr. Speaker. And if he has that evidence, then I look forward to hearing that evidence. And I remember the interview very well. And we are, if you want to talk about politicizing an issue, this is what an example of politicizing the issue is. But I cannot sit in the House, Mr. Speaker, and have a member of this House impugn things I did not say. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just on a point of correction, Mr.
Member,
Speaker.
there is no need for correction. Please proceed.
No, I was correct. He keeps saying politicizing. It's not politicizing. Politicizing is the word. Politicizing. Look your teacher there. Member for Castries East is your teacher. Good. Mr. Speaker, he said that we are not addressing the situation. Mr. Speaker, let me jog his memory. Our murders had never reached 60. We had never reached 60. We got to 60 between 2016 and 2021 under his watch. And it took the murder of a white man up the Mon for him as Prime Minister to address the nation. You want me to repeat it?
Member for Mico South.
Mr. Speaker, so the member is trying to suggest that he knows
What is the point of order, member?
The point of order is the member is misleading the House. How does he know that that's the case? He cannot make that presumption. He doesn't know what I was thinking. He doesn't know any of that. And the fact is we only reached 60 murders once. And why doesn't he speak about how we've addressed it, the policy we put in place, and the reduction, and to speak right now that we've had 3 consecutive years of 75 murders, Mr. Speaker. That's the issue.
If
Yes,
you make
Mr.
your
Speaker.
point of order, stick to your point of order.
Yes, I have.
The statement was not how many times it reached 60. He said the statement was broad, unambiguous. It reached 60 under your watch. That's all he said. Never said it reached 60
Which is a
4
fact.
times. Member of Castries Central. Please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, during the currency of his prime ministership, insofar as the scourge of crime And everybody should be concerned about crime. Although now we see an attitude of celebration when an average citizen lose their life. I'll get into it in a bit. There is an attitude of celebration. Why? Because they will burn a house, Mr. Speaker, to rule over the ashes. And so, Mr. Speaker, it had to take a man with less melanin in his skin to have met his untimely demise, unfortunately so, for the Prime Minister then to address us. And he goes on now to ask about us addressing the nation. You know, Mr. Speaker, no government will condone crime. None. None. And then, Mr. Speaker, you talk about crime. You have the audacity to talk about crime. You are the same one, Mr. Speaker, who demolish the custody suites, the largest holding prisoner facility in the OECS. You put an excavator in it, but guess what? The Prime Minister of this country, member for Castries East, Philip Joseph Pierre, has almost finished a brand new facility.
Member for Mico South.
Again, right on the point of order, Mr. Speaker, the member is misleading the House to suggest that Custody Suites was the largest facility. It was the oldest facility. It was the least functional facility, but certainly not the largest facility. And it's certainly if the member wants to go and brag about a facility that's taken over 4 years to build, of which they can't tell us how much, and we're hearing that it's the delay from toilets that's holding it back. I don't know, Mr. Speaker. The member is misleading the House, okay, and is providing false information to base his argument on, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed, Member for Castries Central.
Let me repeat a factual set of circumstances. Custody Suites was built, Mr. Speaker, under the Prime Ministership of Stephenson King, member of for Castries North. It was built when your humble servant was Minister of Physical Development. Okay? It was the largest prisoner holding facility in the OECS. It was demolished under the stewardship of member for Mico South on a Sunday, and it is now being rebuilt by this current government. If you don't understand, ask your people to tell you what I said. Ite aujourd'hui dimanche, papa ite ale site la, koba elaye. Ek papa ika mutwe moun sa pou demolish ki di kwaze sa. Yo kwaze Custody Suites. Me bo Dieu me la me. If we enti nom sala, a Custody Suites are press fini. And you want to talk about prisoners and crime? You want to talk about it? Then I heard a man, the leader of the opposition, use the word constitutionality. I believe, Mr. Speaker, if he wants a true understanding of the word constitutionality, he should subject himself to a class or a couple of classes. I'm sure the member for Viewford South would readily rearrange his ignorance insofar as constitutionality is concerned and give him a lecture or two. The Constitution is our most supreme law. It is that Constitution that says 30 days after an election, there must be a meeting of Parliament. You blatantly disobeyed the Constitution. When they ask you about it, you said the Constitution does not lay out any sanctions. Today you want to talk about constitutionality? What kind of hypocrisy is this, Mr. Speaker? What kind of thing? You see, you think people don't remember, but I've told you all once I'm around, my archives are loaded. You are the very one, Mr. Speaker. You are the very one, Mr. Speaker, who was Prime Minister when for 5 years we never had a Deputy Speaker. We did not have a Deputy Speaker. When you were asked about that, what did you say? That it is not your responsibility alone, it's the House. And you shifted the responsibility to the opposition. That is the hypocrisy in you. You know, and guess what? This government came in and attempted to fix it. Even that you fought. Even that you fought by filing a case. It is one of how many you have? 51. It is one of your 51 cases. Even that you fought. We are attempting, Mr. Speaker, think of it. We are attempting to fix an anomaly. We are attempting to ensure that moving forward, there is no vacuum.
Member for Miku South.
Mr. Speaker, again, the member is misleading the House. I have filed no case with regards to the Deputy Speaker of the House. In fact, I wrote a letter, and I know that there is an opinion that we're still waiting for, but there's no case that's been filed on that. I would like that statement to be withdrawn, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Castries, strictly speaking, you have to rephrase what you just said.
Very well, Mr. Speaker. When he wrote the letter, he said he was waiting to file. Okay, all right, so that 51 minus 1, he have 15 cut now, 50. He was waiting to file. Okay, let him wait. He'll be waiting in vain until he leaves the shores. So you are the one, Mr. Speaker, now talking about constitutionality. Mr. Speaker, you know, when I hear somebody like the leader of the opposition talk about crime and criminals, Mr. Speaker, it aches me. It aches me to see the manifestation of that kind of hypocrisy, if not dishonesty, disingenuity by this member, Mr. Speaker. You went to the podium and you declared war against the people of St. Lucia. You declared war. Mr. Speaker, can I be heard in silence, please? You declared war on the people of St. Lucia. Tell them I'm coming. We declare war. You asked the people to get angry. You asked them to get angry, a precursor to violent endeavors. Yes, you did. And the clips are there. And today, you want to talk about crime and you're in the interest of the people? Your people called for the burning down of the hospital, a national asset that would take care of our sick and shut in. They asked to burn it down. You have not condemned that. You have not condemned that. You were on national TV. A caller called you and said, let's engage in human roadblocks. You have never condemned it. You embraced it as though it were your own. You have no moral authority, none whatsoever, to speak about anything about crime and interests of the people. None. You know, we went through a democratic process. You're the only prime minister in this country ever to have gone beyond the 5 years. You have been the longest serving prime minister in one term. You were the longest and you didn't want to give up. And when the democratic process was put to the people and they made a resounding choice, and I'll say this without fear of contradiction, if there wasn't that box thing in Miku South, you think the member of the leader of the opposition would be here? But that's another show. No, there was a box issue. A box was in a car. A box. No, he runs too far. He break the bridge and he ran away. So you have no moral authority to speak about crime. None whatsoever. You know, roadblocks. Flog them. One call for the busting of the prime minister's head. You will see blood. And you engage. I'm angry. You're not angry. You know, and then talk about violence. Then want to preach about violence. You know, Mr. Speaker, and you know, your humble servant has not been without a lot of attacks. And I believe I can safely say, because this morning a voice note was sent to me. Mr. Speaker, I have quite a bit to say, but just bear with me. I listened to a voice note, and it was accompanied by a paragraph that says, if Pierre fire him, he'll take all of them down. I want to say to them openly in front of the Prime Minister, in front of the Prime Minister, Barcelona would never fire Messi, okay? Real Madrid will never fire Mbappe unless they do something fundamentally wrong. Central alone will, and they will not fire. They'll rush to fire me. You know, Mr. Speaker, unless a member of his cabinet, of any Prime Minister's cabinet, does something fundamentally wrong, is doing his work and is delivering to the people as he undertook to, he's an asset to the office and an asset to the government. Put that in your pipes and smoke it. So they are saying they'll fire me. They'll fire Hillary if he let the consultants say, if they let Hillary run the next election. Nonsense. As though you all want to work your magic in Philip JP's head, the Prime Minister. But Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, those are the things that they keep saying and doing to create discord among us. To create discord among us. This morning, Mr. Speaker, I saw a placard. You know, I saw a placard talking about CIP funds and the person is right outside there. But I want to tell them, Mr. Speaker, oh yes, the one, yes. I saw somebody outside who had the physical attributes and acute resemblance of a minister who hired a husband to drive her. You know, she had the resemblance. And she's right there, but you know, Mr. Speaker, I'm telling you, shamelessness sees no boundaries. Because under the last administration, no one could have come within the precincts of this chamber. It was you, Mr. Speaker, when this current government won the elections that permitted persons to now congregate outside here. So the very people for whom they seemingly make useless noises are the ones who don't want them around the courthouse. But today, they enjoy that liberty and they are taking that right for granted. And then I'm hearing her shouting, so many murders. Another one to shout, so many murders. Mr. Speaker, of recent past, as I said earlier, one murder is too many. But in the recent past, we had a brother who killed a brother. You blaming the government for that? That one was in Roselle. You have another brother who killed another brother in another house. You want to blame the government for that? Huh? A man chopped his woman and others. The member for Sozel Saltibus referred to it earlier. You will blame the government for that, Mr. Speaker? You want to blame the government. Yet, Mr. Speaker, when your humble servant takes a stance and calls out the criminals, they take a totally 360 view. Why? Because they want crime to fester. They see it, Mr. Speaker. They see it as a launching pad to regain power in this country. But that will not happen, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say something about the police. About the police, their functionality, and what this government has done for the police. In their effort, in their quest, and in their responsibility of discharging justice to a form and in a manner that would meet the embrace of the citizenry at large. Mr. Speaker, in the last 50 years, and I say last 50, although it is the third highest in history, in the last 50 years, a 13% increase in the salaries of civil servants is the third highest in our history. The third highest in our history. Mr. Speaker, what bid that? 1979. 1979, when we attained independence, and independence came with a basket of goodies for the citizenry. That included a greater percentage. Then when I was in government, Mr. Speaker, and the member for Castries North was Prime Minister, there was a 14% increase to civil servants. At the time, Mr. Speaker, at the time, he was castigated. They tore him apart. They call him foolish, they call him stupid, because it was felt that a 14% increase to civil servants was unsustainable. It was unsustainable, and it placed the government coffers under tremendous financial pressure. But he stood his ground and he gave it to them. He stood his ground and he gave it to them, Mr. Speaker. You know why? Because the member for Castries North cares about the interests of our people, especially the civil servants, Mr. Speaker. And then you have the current situation. 13% increase to civil servants, Mr. Speaker. 13%. By a man whose policies have gone only in one direction, that is to see the country and its people move forward together. 13%, Mr. Speaker. And I will not go through the plethora of policies because, like I said, Mr. Speaker, the fodder that has been provided with the general set of circumstances with which I'm confronted, coupled with the fact that I was in hibernation last week, will make for a very interesting Thursday night. A very interesting and one that persons will await with bated breath. Because you cannot tell me, Mr. Speaker, on the one hand you're asking for everything, and on the other hand you want to kill our revenue stream. Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy.
Member for Castries.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm going back to justice.
I imagine at some point you will collide with the bill.
Yes, definitely, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, you know, we want the police to do what they have to do in dispensation of justice. We want them to do what they have to do, Mr. Speaker. We want to ensure that whatever they do, Mr. Speaker, quite apart from the police, you have the pensioners, there are police officers who have been on pension. One not too long ago, Mr. Speaker, he actually went on a microphone and said to the Prime Minister, I recently retired from the police force, and I thank you for the incremental increase in my pension. Today you have pensioners' salaries tied to increases to the public service, Mr. Speaker. You have all kind of goodies, youth economy. You have minimum wage, but they would not have been interested in minimum wage. Minimum wage, you have everything good. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, there were situations where persons were getting $125 a month as a pension. Something that you cannot even walk down the road to say hello, because a lot of people, before you say hello, give me $20. So you can't say hello to anybody. Today, the minimum is $500. Thank you, member for Castries. Yes, over $500. A 300% increase, Mr. Speaker. 300% increase. And thank God the CIP is making its contribution, not for the benefit of the member of Castries East or Prime Minister of Philip J. Pierre, but for the people of this country, because it provides revenue that can cause him to discharge policies which impact positively and financially on the people of this country, Mr. Speaker. So when I hear all of those things, Mr. Speaker, and do this and do that, you know, Mr. Speaker, let me go into the police a little bit. Let me go into the little piece. Because, you see, I can speak from a standpoint of knowledge. I am the youngest man, and do your researches, you will find out that this is a fact. Youngest man to have ever been recruited into the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. Richard Frederick. I joined the police force on the 4th of January 1983. Having left, where were you then? You probably were in Matnik. I joined the police force on the 4th of January 1983. Well, you joined as a constable. there's only one person I know in the civil service that joined at grade 19 after 4 weeks of training in England. You know how they call her Nancy. Mr. Speaker, that's the only person I know. But I joined but I joined as a constable. Mr. Speaker, I trained in Barbados, emerged best recruit. Came back here in May of 1983 and celebrated my 18th birthday whilst a fully fledged police officer. So, and there is this old phenomenon, Mr. Speaker, once a police, always a police. So the police interest runs through my veins. But I will never, ever use the police for personal political gain. That will not happen, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under the last administration, even the vote for the training of the police was removed. The police had a vote for training, and it was removed when the leader of the opposition was Prime Minister. But guess what, Mr. Speaker? This government replaced it. Just like the distress zone, Mr. Speaker. It was removed by him. This government replaced it, Mr. Speaker. Demolish custody suites. This government is replacing it. That building, Mr. Speaker, which had seen approval, this year approval, long before 2016, when they occupy the chairs of authority in this country, Mr. Speaker, because the Northern Police Headquarters in Grosile was not the brainchild of the Flabo government, Mr. Speaker. Notwithstanding it had been approved, it was left, the plans were left there to rot. I can safely say, Mr. Speaker, that this government came in and the Grosile Northern Divisional Headquarters is almost completed, Mr. Speaker, thanks to this government. So when you talk about the police, in the first 2 years, Mr. Speaker, in the first 2 years, this government did for the police what the last government did not do in 5 years. In 5 years, they could not do it. We did it in 2 years. Vehicles galore and everything else. And those are facts, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, when you hear them gloating and talking what otherwise should have found refuge in a septic tank, Mr. Speaker, you have to ask yourself, what are they talking about? What are they talking about, Mr. Speaker? You know, Mr. Speaker, now I'm hearing about overtime. Mr. Speaker, like I said,
Member, you really should get back to the bill.
That's the justice. I'm dealing with the police part of the justice.
Well, it's a child justice, man.
Yes, but the police have children too, so they must feel comfortable for the child to be all right. And that's what it is, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, very quickly, I promise I will not belabor those points. I never heard of police getting overtime. I mean, overtime. All of a sudden, indentations in policy and law being fetched left, right, and center. And now I'm hearing overtime. In my days, there was the duty allowance. But then again, times have changed. But, Mr. Speaker, one of the most salient points I want to make, Mr. Speaker. You know, overtime is raising its ugly head only now. Only now. And they'll tell you it's not political, it's convenient. Under the last administration, the police were the first ones to have concluded negotiations under the last administration, accepted a 4% for the triennial. Today, Mr. Speaker, the government is granting 13%, 3 times as much. 3 times as much. All unions have agreed, but the police. but the police. 7 unions have agreed, but the police. No, no, no. It's not political, it's convenient. It's not political. You know, Mr. Speaker, this government, and I'm telling you, the Prime Minister had a hard time selling that to members of his cabinet. And we had to say, let's give the fellas that. A 57% increase in the allowances. Les 7 lycéens, pour les joindre increase allowance, qu'a vini 57%. 57% increase in allowances that cost the government, Mr. Speaker, $8 million. Just the police. But they want the allowances to be further increased to cost the government another $12 million. You know, les 7 lycéens. Les 7 lycéens.
Remember, the estimates are coming soon.
Yes.
So perhaps please return.
Well, Mr. Speaker,
I want to ask you to return to the bill, but you haven't touched
Mr.
it at all.
Speaker, I will end on that note by essentially saying that I thank God that I have an alternative forum, and I will continue to enlighten the masses with facts. With facts. I will show the increases they accepted. I will show they were the first to conclude negotiations. I will show we have given them 3 times as much. I will show they get 57% increase. But you see, when they have their eyes on candidacy, that's what happens. So, Mr. Speaker, I will leave the balance of my contribution.
Member from Mico South.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, the member from Castries Central is impugning things to persons who are not even in the House, Mr. Speaker.
Who's they?
Really
Who is the
unacceptable.
person that he's imputing?
He knows. Suggesting that the police have alternative
No,
motives. for
remember,
the
you are
negotiation.
you have stood up on a point of order,
Yes.
suggesting that the member has imputing who is the person whom he has made reference to.
He made reference to the persons who were negotiating with the police, saying that they were negotiating because they had eyes on
He said that?
candidacy. He said that.
He said the persons who were negotiating?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Castries Central, please proceed.
You see, Mr. Speaker, the sad reality is when you make a statement that is basically inundated with generalizations, but in their minds they know everything, they kind of home in. They kind of home in on what their personal knowledge of the situation is, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, having said all of that, I do believe that the member for Viewfort South was on target, and we may just be entering dangerous territory. Because, Mr. Speaker, when we are elected to this August chamber, we are elected by the people for the people. And they are the ones who want to ensure that whatever we do it in a manner that finds accord with what they desire of us. And so it is almost an attempt at relinquishment, if I may call it that, for us to be sideliners in a matter where we should be the short callers, so to speak, Mr. Speaker. Having said all of that, Mr. Speaker, I want to say I support the bill and whatever little amendments that need to be made can be done at the committee stage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll see you on Thursday.